want to know how you see the world. Do you seek out urban beauty? Or do you create your own landscapes? Maybe it's outdoor adventure that makes your world turn. Let us bring your passion into focus and give you the best view yet. At Botwin Eye Group and Oculus Optical, we defy the norms by combining advanced medical eye care with Santa Fe's finest selection of luxury and artful eyeglasses. Botwin Eye Group and Oculus Optical, 2 locations in Santa Fe.
Santa Fe Gloom, we're back. Sorry today, I do not have, for the people who are tuning in on YouTube, sorry that I do not have the flag behind me today. My condo's getting some paint done, so it's literally drying. So we're kind of breaking tradition a little bit, but anyways, thank you all for all jumping on. We've got an amazing guest today. Happens to be a real good friend of mine who's done an amazing activities and so many community engagements, really all over the United States and kind of all over the world. And Ralphie, who is the celebrity historian. So Ralphie, thank you so much for jumping on today.
Of course. Great to be here, supporting you.
No, for sure. And speaking of support, thank you all to our sponsors. As always, I can't thank you enough. In the Pantry Dose of Santa Fe, City of Santa Fe Economic Development, Capital Ford, Sam's Club, Mercedes-Benz Santa Fe, and Oculus. Thank you guys all so very much for everything you do. So Ralph, let's dive in, man. Just kind of give us your Santa Fe story. I know you're born and raised in California and LA area, but you fell in love with Santa Fe and Taos in northern New Mexico. So kind of give us just some framework of your love of Santa Fe.
Sure. After I graduated college in 2006, I graduated a semester early because I was ahead of my coursework. And so I had a winter off before I went to graduate school that fall. And in the summers, I was working at the Gettysburg Battlefield. So I knew I had that winter down. So I came to Taos, New Mexico to go skiing for the winter, lived on a second story of a wood shop on a ranch for next to nothing. 21 years old, you could live on nothing, right? And so what I realized, having a background in history at that point, was that there was a lot of history and culture here that I did not know about. I came there for the steep mountains and the snow, but I didn't realize that there was, a World Heritage Site almost across the street from me in Taos Pueblo, and all the Spanish colonial history, because I was into English colonial history, And so when that happened, having that background in history and working at historic sites and history major in undergrad, I was fascinated. So I vowed to come back. So when I went to grad school, I went back out east, and that was already where I'd applied. And as soon as I finished my coursework in that initial round of grad school, I came back to New Mexico and lived in New Mexico for about 8-9 years in Los Alamos and Santa Fe. And in Los Alamos, I worked at the History Museum up there, the Los Alamos Historical Society, not the Bradbury Science Museum, but the History Museum, which is a separate organization. And while I was there was the museum expansion that included, modernizing the museum and covering all the stories of Los Alamos, going from indigenous peoples to the homesteaders, who, of course, which were a lot of the local Hispano families, to the ranch school, the boys' ranch school, and national elite school for prep, going to college. And then finally, of course, the Manhattan Project and the Cold War. And so that was a really cool time to be there, and a lot of community work there. And then I moved to Santa Fe, where I lived for several years within that chunk of time, and worked at a TV station for a while, worked in financial planning and insurance for a while. And really loved the area and was very active in a lot of cultural organizations, volunteering, as well as just visiting and enjoying events, having background in museums and historic sites. There's certainly tons of them in New Mexico. And so I took advantage of that while I was there. And of course, the beautiful architecture. That's something I enjoy as well.
And Ralph, share with our audience how we met.
So, of course, when I was working in the insurance and financial advising world, I was at a event some sort of networking event at a home care agency, I think it was, right? And that company, I was there, trying to meet people. This is probably early in my career in that industry. And you walked in, you weren't even there for that long, but you walked in and you were one of the only other guys that was my age, so that helped. And somehow we started chatting, and I could just tell that you had a certain seriousness about you, if that makes sense. To that you were here to do, like, actually get things done, not just kind of chit chat. And I like that. So you handed me your card, I remember, and I said I would follow up, and of course I did. A lot of people say they're going to follow up, and they don't, right? But I said what I'm going to do, and I did it. And we met at Starbucks. I remember the first time, got to know each other, and from there, of course, went on to do multiple business things, as well as become friends, of course, and kind of advisors to each other, right? We're always giving each other advice on things, support, friendship, etc. And so that was a really, really cool way to meet. So the lesson there is, A, you should go out and be visible, and B, you should follow up with the people that you meet, especially if you say you're going to do so, because you don't know what could be in front of you. And that's how we met, of course, in Santa Fe.
Yeah, so it was a long-term care insurance
Yes.
seminar.
Is that what it was? Was
Yeah.
it a seminar? I don't even remember that it was a seminar. Oh, that's funny. I
Yeah.
see. I don't recall that.
Yeah, it was like how to sign up for like long-term care insurance.
Okay, that's funny. Of course, I was working. That was part of what I did. Was I offered long-term care insurance at the time.
Right.
It's part of what I was doing, and it wasn't my seminar. I know that, but I probably went to learn and see and meet people. But just a topic area. So another good example of, you should go even if it's a competitor that's up there, because again, you may meet other people in the audience like we met.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then the way you followed up was we met in person, right?
Yep.
But then you also, very similar to our other guest, Mitch Joyce, you wrote me a
Yes.
handwritten letter. And we were even we were friends, like it was match made in heaven. We hit it off, right? But you would still send those notes 6 months to a year, and I'd get them in the mail.
Yeah, I had a system and a process, and I stuck to it, right?
Yeah.
And so I wasn't gonna change it just because of us becoming friends.
Yeah.
To me, you get treated the same way in the process of what I'm doing, regardless. Yeah, I'm not gonna take a shortcut just because I know you better.
Yeah. No, that was great. I mean, that always held something special in my heart. And then you also laminated my business card.
Yes. So exactly. So one of the things when I send a thank you card, instead of trying to further sell you, which I think sometimes happens, which I think robs the thank you, what I would do is try to do something that's for you. And yes, what I did was, when you had that business card, I laminated it and put a little loop on it so it can serve as a bag tag, right?
Yeah.
And so now you have a professional bag tag. So it was just a little way. I had a little laminating machine. It was very simple to do, but that little bit of effort, it really stands out, because of course, not many people are doing that, and it's something that is useful to you. So anytime you use it, you're going to think of me, and I'm not even putting my brand on there. I'm putting your brand on there, but actually makes it more useful to you, right? So it's kind of thinking customer focus, right? It's thinking from their perspective, not from yours, just pushing your stuff out there all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's excellent framework, and that's the right approach, right? So it's amazing. Tell our audience what you do in terms of all of your TV appearances. How many times you've been on TV, and what are you talking about? And then we'll do a sneak peek. I found a new way.
Sure.
I found a new way to figure this out, to show a video clip. So the audience will have to be patient with me, but unload what you do on TV and how many times you've been on there.
So the last few years, I've been going on TV doing my appearances as the celebrity historian, as you introduced me in the beginning. And what I've been on almost 200 times on ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox stations in maybe 30 plus cities across the country. I mean, from coast to coast, north to south, all over the place, big city, small city. And so what that is about is the fact that is two things. One is, as I mentioned earlier, I initially had a background in history, right? And I, of course, go on doing various historical topics. I make it fun. Part of the reason I go on major network TV and not like the History Channel, is because I want to be demonstrating that I can speak about these things to a non-specialized audience, which means you have to make it engaging and interesting and even fun, because they're not people that are already into history, so it doesn't matter if you like history or not. I'm just making good TV, because those TV programs want to make good TV. They're not into history any more than they're into anything else. They just want good stories, right? And so if we're talking about from the client's perspective, if I'm offering that value, now it's very important to understand, like, I'm not buying advertising, I'm not paying for this stuff. I'm just pitching and I'm getting on by the value that I offer, which is for them to hold their viewers, because TV stations want to hold viewers. And so if I'm able to offer that value and stand out from the, hundreds of pitches they get a day, then they're going to put me on, right? And then when I deliver, then they put me on again and again. That's really a testament to the success, because I do repeat appearances all the time, including, of course, in New Mexico. And so what that means is that you're delivering value for the station, and in the process, of course, I'm getting not only exposure but the marketing asset, which is the ability to show that, hey, I am a recognized expert in this arena because I'm regularly being featured, sharing these stories, right? And the other side to that is the business angle, because having worked in the financial arena, and now as I have multiple credentials in that regard, whether it's in financial planning, business, having done consulting work, etc., and marketing. I used to work in advertising years ago. I use those skills to be able to get on television, right? Those are skills that have nothing to do with history. That has to do with marketing, PR, business skills, and then builds programs around that. Like, how do you try to monetize that, right? And so it really kind of reflects kind of my two sides, which is the history side and that business side, which is how I started. Because when I worked in Los Alamos at the History Museum, I was not only doing history programs, but I was also participating in a $5 million, or what turned out to be a $5 million fundraising campaign. And so I was always into both sort of not only what the delivery of the product is, let's say it could be history in some case, but how do you actually, much like in business, how do you raise the money to make this stuff happen? How much money do you need, the operations, etc.? I was always interested in both of those. And so the celebrity historian gig kind of allows me to use both of those sides of me.
Yeah, I think a lot of businesses, they focus on who they think their customer is, like that low-hanging fruit. But really good entrepreneurs, business owners, they find people who aren't like intuitively into their business and find that customer. That's something that we're looking to do with like the Santa Fe Gloom. Obviously, Santa Fe is a big soccer town, but we don't want to just have our soccer fans there. We want to have other people there for other attractions, right? So
I think it's a great point, because sporting events are not just about the sport itself. They're civic events. They're gathering, the gathering spaces. Like, for example, I go to baseball games in St. Louis, where I live now, and of course, Cardinals are a big deal. And I'm not a particularly huge baseball fan. I like it, but I'm not like, it's not my favorite sport or something. But it is fun to go because it's a community gathering space. It's a place where the community is all rooting for one thing, which is kind of cool, right? People coming together, especially nowadays with a lot of fracturing in society. I think it's really cool to have something people come around. It's something that you can go out with your friends, or a business friend, or a business network person, or anything like that, which it's something to do together and have fun. It's also a way to, engage with the community. I often go to these games and I run into people I know that I even expect to be there. And that has a certain community value as well, right? There's community connections. And so I think, to your point, David, what's really important about a sport is not just people that are into soccer, but getting beyond that for people to see, hey, this is a cool place for the community to gather, my family to have an outing, right? And a lot of times families going out nowadays is really expensive, where you can go to a game and it's very inexpensive or free, depending on exactly how you do it. And so now you have, it's not just a sporting event, but it's competing with other family outings and community gatherings.
Yeah. Santa Fe Gloom's always going to be bigger than the sport, bigger than just futsal or soccer. Excellent. All right, Ralphie, here goes. Let's see if I can get you
back to the TV.
Let's see if we can get you on the screen. Let's see. Bet you I can. We'll do the one you just did. Let's see.
Okay, that one? Okay.
Yeah. And Ralph, you can stop me at any point
Okay.
to explain anything or whatever.
Sure.
We have a very special celebrity guest joining us after the break. Stay tuned.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Coded today. Well, as we begin to gather for the food and fireworks to celebrate another birthday for our nation, there is no better time to remind ourselves of social etiquette from the father of our country, George Washington. As we eat, drink, talk, and enjoy the show, celebrity historian Raffi Andonian is here as George Washington, as we can see, to share a few of his rules of civility and decent behavior in company and conversation. Welcome.
Okay, so pause it for a moment.
Okay.
So what's going on there? Yeah, that's a good screenshot. See, right there. So, by the way, from a business marketing standpoint, one of the reasons I like going on TV is that screenshot right there. If you take it and clean it up, is a great marketing asset. It's a great photo that can go on your website, brochure, business card, whatever, in different ways, sales pitches, because that looks good. And you're getting that, the credibility that you have by being on television, right? Now, what you're seeing here is a couple of things. One is it's timely. So this is for July 4th. That's why we're talking about, are you following George Washington's rules of civility on the 4th of July, right? And she opened it with, as you gather around the grill, you're having a drink, you're socializing. This is a time to remember the rules of civility, right? And because George Washington's rules of civility were about socializing. How do you properly socialize and have manners, right? And why on July 4th? Well, that's the best time to think about the father of the country, right? It makes more sense then than it does, for example, over, Christmas or something. And so we're making it timely. TV likes something that's timely, right? Because it needs current. So you need to find a way to make it current. You can't just show up and say, I want to talk about what I want to talk about. Well, why does it matter? You got to make it good TV. The other thing I did is I obviously showed up in costume. That's not something I do often. Normally I do the pink bow tie, which is my trademark, which kind of pops on TV. But when relevant and to make it fun, I will do that, right? And so that obviously is in the George Washington costume, and that she noted it in the beginning, which is very important. And then finally, you're seeing a bunch of props on the table. And one of the things that I would say that is very valuable is you remember that you're on a visual medium. And so because you're on a visual medium, you want to make sure you're using the visual. So using a costume or a pop of color like my bow tie I'm wearing right now, or those props that you're seeing on there are very, very important. You will also see at some point, they'll run an image. I gave them the image. I usually give them many images. They pick what they want to run. So we're using the fact we're on a visual medium. We're not on radio. Not that there's anything wrong with radio. It's just radio is a different kind of thing. And we're on TV. So since we have the camera there, we got to work the camera, not just talk, because you don't want to just be seen talking, right? So with that in mind, why don't you carry forward and I'll point out a couple more things.
Conversation when you're hanging out for July 4th this weekend, maybe in anticipation of the holiday or on the holiday. So I think it applies wonderfully. You got to look to the father of the country for the rules on Independence Day.
Absolutely. Yes. I love the get up. You brought some props, we're going to munch on a little bit of food too. So I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Let's go through some of it. So so he has 110 rules of civility.
Oh, okay.
So we're not going to get to 110, but I picked a few that apply to us here today.
Yes. Okay.
And one of them is drink not, nor talk with your mouth full.
Okay.
So let's say you're having a beer, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to take a drink of your beer.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you should drink it. What you should not do is he says, let's say you're going to eat your hot dog or whatever you're eating. When your mouth is full, this is not what you should be doing. Talking with your mouth full is not why George Washington founded the country.
Yeah.
Remember, he's saying drink not, nor talk with your mouth full. So if your mouth is full, don't go and try to wash it down with the beer. That's the worst thing you could do, according to George Washington, one of his rules.
I mean, he knew a thing or two, huh?
Absolutely. Now, what does he go on to say that's related to this?
Mm-hmm.
He says, put not another bite into your mouth till the former be swallowed.
Okay.
So I haven't finished eating this bite yet, right?
Yeah.
Well, what you don't want to do is put another bite into your mouth as you're trying to finish the first one. Because now I got two.
Yeah.
And now I'm forced even more to have to wash it down.
Uh-huh.
Which means I'm violating rule number 1 too. So I'm violating both in one shot.
Okay,
That's
I got
not what you want to do. Now, as I try to eat this, I'll go through a couple
Pauses
of rules.
for a second.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so I mentioned at the beginning, there's 110 rules of civility. So how did I pick a few of them? The first two that I picked you'll notice were kind of related. It said, eat not nor talk with your mouth full, or excuse me, drink not nor talk with your mouth full, and then put not another bite into your mouth till the former be swallowed. So I used the bite from the first one to take the second bite because he was saying, don't bite another one until you finish swallowing the first one, right? So I picked two that are connected. So you got to think about the content and how it's going to flow. You don't just show up and say, I'm going to wing it, okay? Because then it's not going to flow that way. That doesn't mean I'm scripted. It just means I know which rules I'm going to cover, because that's a natural interaction up there. We just go, I don't have a teleprompter. I don't have anything. I just know, just like I just spit back the rules to you right now. I just know it, because part of doing anything good when you're performing in business or something like this is to be prepared. And when you're prepared, what that means is that you have the tools ready to go, right? You're still going to adjust to the dynamic of the situation that's unfolding in front of you, which is the way I'm interacting with her. This is a live take. It's live TV. You get one shot at it. There's no redos. There's no clipping. There's no editing. It's one shot. And that is really good public presentation training too, because you see all these, reels on Instagram and stuff now, but a lot of them are, you can look, it's like 3-second clips that are like pieced together, right? They're cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste. Well, anyone can look good doing cut and paste because you're going to have that repeat take, and you can take your best sentence here, your best sentence there. But not everyone can string it all together in a way that's smooth and successful. And if somebody watches that video, if you've never been to North Dakota, because that one is in the North Dakota market, if you've never been there and you didn't see it live, it doesn't matter, because you're watching it right now, for example, and you see that I'm a good public presenter. You see that I can make this thing fun, and you see that I'm prepared because I'm naturally interacting, but I also know where I want to take this thing. Does that make sense? And the other thing I want to see, you should see, is while I'm engaging her, I'm still actually driving the segment. And a lot of times TV hosts want you to do that. They want you to talk. They want you to make it easy on them to carry forward the content. They don't want to have to pull the words out of you because you're clammed up on camera. So you got to be ready to just like kind of take the steering wheel, but of course also allow them to jump in and even engage with them, because I'm talking to her and I'm engaging with her. But you can see she's kind of laid back and letting me drive because she trusts me to do that. It helps that I've been on this station several times, so you also develop that rapport, and I know how she engages. Does that make sense? So these are all components that are happening that you may not realize as you're watching, but are very important behind the scenes to think about. When you're preparing to do something like this, which is not only important on TV, but it's important if you're going on a lot of podcasts. It's important if you're doing a lot of YouTube videos. It's important if you're doing a lot of public presentations, sales presentations, board presentations, chamber presentations, whatever it is. Many of the principles apply, especially when there's a visual element involved. You can use a lot of these same principles, because doing something that is appealing and engaging in addition to having good content is very important. And very importantly here, making it relevant. George Washington's rules of civility are not relevant except for how I brought it in. You're at a 4th of July barbecue. Let's figure out how we can apply it, right? And so that's very important, is how is it relevant to the audience now? So you have to remember that when you're talking about your product or your service or whatever it is, it's not just about why your stuff is so great. I could just sit there and talk about, oh yeah, George Washington's rules of civility are wonderful for all these. I'm trying to relate it to what's in front of you, right? And to what is happening in your life right now, this week, or the week that this particular segment is running. So these are all principles that transcend. And one of the things that was awesome about TV for me is not just the credibility that you get, but also continuing to sharpen my presentation skills because of the reasons that I'm describing. So, okay, carry on.
July 4th, of course, being Independence Day.
Yeah.
Now look, I'm
This
going
is
to
a
use the
copy of
prop. You don't have to pause it. But look how I'm going to use the Declaration
Now,
of
what you
Independence.
may not realize, even though it says July 4th on here, is the actual Independence Day is July 2nd. Because that's when Congress actually agreed or voted to separate from Britain.
Interesting.
So the real Independence Day for some history folks is July 2nd. It's not until July 4th that we declared it to the world.
Okay.
And believe it or not, it's not until the remainder of July and August, over the course of weeks, the founders signed it, because it took them weeks to sign it, to come in and out of Philadelphia. So it's not really one scene.
Yeah.
When we gathered the grill, we're kind of announcing, or we're celebrating the announcement to the world more than anything else.
Okay.
Now, let's go to another one of the rules.
Yes.
Because as we're talking about these things, we've eaten now. And he says, speak not evil of the absent, for it is unjust. So, for
That's a good
example,
one.
you hear that Ashlyn doesn't really like Medora? Speaking evil
Oh,
of the absent.
oh
She's
no.
not here. That is not what you're
Oh.
supposed to do. You do not speak speak evil of the
Pause for a
absent for
second.
those that are not here. That's not what you want.
So you heard off camera, someone went, oh, right? You heard that sound off camera. So Ashlyn is the co-host, okay? And she's not on camera right now. And when I said she doesn't like Medora, because right before me, they had done a feature on Medora, North Dakota, which is really cool, kind of old Western town, has Theodore Roosevelt ties. Theodore Roosevelt had been there many times, had a ranch there. And they were just doing a piece on Medora, and they were talking about how much they love it, right? And they had some photos of them there, etc. And I decided, because when I'm going to do the talking point about, speak not evil of the absent, for it is unjust, which is saying don't gossip behind someone's back, right? That's what it's saying. I was like, oh, I can incorporate what they just ran, and I can incorporate Ashlyn, who's on this show, but is off camera right now, is not present from the viewer standpoint, and tie it very relevant to the flow of the show. That's me improvising, because I know my material so well. I know that what the content is I'm going to deliver is that I'm going to be able to say, let me make this directly relevant to them. You do this sort of thing, people want you back. And it's the same kind of idea as, again, being customer focused, right? What's relevant to them? Use their characters, their situation, their story. And Ashlyn interacted. You heard her kind of do that sound off camera. It picked it up. It picked it up, even though she wasn't she's in the studio, but she wasn't on camera for this particular segment, right? And so I'm referring to a real person that's there. I'm referring to something they just did with Medora, and I'm poking fun at her, saying, hey, she didn't like it. She was lying when she was up there saying that she likes it. That makes it fun and engaging, especially for the viewer there. And again, so what that means is, don't take yourself too seriously. Look, I'm in a costume. I'm stuffing a hot dog in my face on live TV. I'm drinking the beer, all for the purpose of having a good show, because I'm not going to take myself too seriously. And that also lightens the situation, right? If this is the first time you're finding out about me and you see this clip, let's think about this as a marketing segment, right? You're going to be like, man, this guy is, doesn't take himself too seriously, and not coming off arrogant is a very important trait, right? And I think in the process, I'm also poking fun at the co-host, right? And having fun and making it directly relevant locally to them. Those are all things that I'm doing. Humor is a great way to do that, especially when it's locally or relevant to the particular audience that you're talking to. So carry on.
Okay.
So don't be talking smack when you're gathering together around the grill, right?
Okay, this is a good talk. Which of course we know that she did love it.
Exactly. So here's the best part then. Rule number 4 that's related to that, to correct that, is be not hasty to believe flying reports to the disparagement of any. So let's say we heard that Ashlyn doesn't like Medora. Well, be not hasty. Don't be quick to believe flying reports, or these negative reports to the disparagement of somebody. So don't believe it.
Okay.
He says somewhere in this book to Google it. That's what he says, right? George Roy says, Google it, or come here and ask Ashlyn yourself. You'll see that she actually loved Medora. So that was just smack talk that was rotating, that was going around.
I think
so pause for a moment again.
Right?
So what's funny is the fourth rule I wanted to cover was exactly that. Be not hasty to believe flying reports to the disparagement of any. In other words, if you hear this negative things, don't necessarily believe it, right? And the host didn't know that was coming next. But she kind of automatically set it up because it's so conversational, because she said, well, we know that's not true, right? And I was like, oh, that's funny you say that, because the next rule is don't believe the smack talk you hear, right? So it just weaved in. So if you're prepared and you're making it naturally flow, it's going to come naturally, right? And let's pretend if she had said something else that like made me think of another one from the several that I have in mind, I could skip out of order in that situation and cover, let's say, rule number 6 and next, as opposed to rule number 4. No problem, because if you're prepared enough, you can just switch it, right? You can just, it's like in football, let's say there's a play called and you do an audible at the line of scrimmage, right? You change the play. It's still a play from the playbook. You've prepared for it. You're not just inventing it, right? So that's what I mean. Like you can just switch it up based on the situation. But in that case, because it was so natural, conversational, and engaging, it just happened and it set me up perfectly. Now, the image that you're seeing there, they played only one of the images I gave them, but that's fine. It's their decision. I usually give several and they pick 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever they want to pick. I gave him that image, so I'm helping make it easier on them. And the only funny thing was, you'll hear me refer to a book, and that's actually staying on the table. It's a red book. And in other versions of this, you see I pick it up. But this one, for some reason, it just was bad timing. Like I picked up the book right when the image was up, so you don't see me pick up the book. But I was working on picking up the book. So let's say they didn't have the image up, you would actually see me picking up the book. So
That's related to that.
Worth noting is, again, I'm trying to work and interact with the props, but in that case, you missed that particular one. Okay.
Yeah, I'm showing the book, I guess.
Right? Oh yeah. Yep, there it is. Yep, which is not even my book. It's the Rules of Civility book. And I mentioned in there that you can get it at Mount Vernon, which I have no tie to it. I just give people what the good place to go is. Mount Vernon, of course, is George Washington's home, so that's a place that this stuff makes no sense.
Ralphie, can I show the New Mexico one too? You don't have to talk us through it. I just want to air it real quick.
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah.
Let me see if I can pull that one up.
And that one, by the way, this North Dakota one that reminds me, that's with Miss North Dakota right there. She's a current Miss North Dakota. And you can see, I mean, she's very graceful. She's beautiful. She handles herself very well, talks well. And so you get to meet some interesting, cool people like that too. And now I can say, we did that TV segment with Miss North Dakota. Yeah. And the reason that reminded me is because here in New Mexico, the segment you're going to watch is with the former Miss New Mexico. So a lot of times, folks that are in performance-oriented, industries are going to be the ones that end up on TV. No different than in sports. A lot of times athletes end up becoming commentators because not only do they know the subject matter, but they're used to performing on camera.
Yeah. So this is one in Albuquerque. Yeah.
Yep. I don't hear it though.
Yeah, I haven't played it, the music yet, unless you want me to.
Play the opening because I want to show something on this one.
Okay.
You're watching KRQE News 13 on Fox New Mexico.
We often think of New Mexico as a tricultural state, Hispanic, Anglo, and Native American. But we may be overlooking the impact of one of our communities, which we recognize today as we close Black History Month. Joining us to talk about Black history in New Mexico, we are joined by none other than celebrity historian Raffi Andonian. Good morning, Raffi.
Good morning.
Welcome. Always so much fun having you on this morning. Tell us a little bit about the Buffalo Soldiers and who they were, who they are.
Buffalo Soldiers.
Yeah. Great
in
song.
The heart
Great
of
song.
America,
Yeah.
right? Legends and Bob Marley's song. There's a movie with Danny Glover featured as well.
So kicked it off with singing. Again, immediately, we're going to have fun. I'm not taking myself too seriously. The singing is not perfect, but that's part of the point. That shows confidence when you're able to do that, even when your singing is obviously not perfect, right? Notice the pink bow tie. That's usually my trademark. That's something that people have come to recognize and expect. It's also a nice bright color. It's a solid color that pops on TV. You will notice a lot of times TV personalities wear bright colors on television, and they try generally to avoid patterns because it comes out better on camera. So I just copied what they do.
Well, so kind of legendary figures now. They start in 1866 when there is Congress creates a regiment or several regiments of Black soldiers. Now, Black soldier service goes for that period. It goes back to the Civil War because initially Black soldiers are joining
image I gave them
enslaved people to kind of prove themselves and get treated with dignity. Well, that carries over after the Civil War when Congress creates that.
Image I gave them.
They, after the Civil War, fight in the Plains Wars, as it's known, in the effort of westward expansion against tribal peoples, and they acquired the name Buffalo Soldiers because some American Indians would look at them and they saw they had darker skin and curly hair and fought really well. And so they gave them that nickname, Buffalo Soldiers. Now, what's fascinating is there is reason to believe that they fought really well. So the Buffalo Soldiers formed about 10% of the American military. But despite being given lesser resources, lesser equipment, they actually had lower desertion rates. That means they stayed in the Army at higher rates. And 19 Medal of Honor winners from the Buffalo Soldiers will come out. So they had a record of very good service. And eventually that was part of the reason that the first person was admitted for born into slavery, but later becomes the first person at West Point Academy who's Black to then graduate and eventually become an officer.
Wow.
So pause it.
How does their story?
So a couple things. One, you saw how I weaved this larger picture together and then brought it specifically to New Mexico well, New Mexico up to the larger picture, and then later on I'm going to come back to this specifically to New Mexico. But what's really important there is A, I gave them the images, so that matters, again, making their life easier. B, when she asked me the question, I didn't just answer the question in 2 sentences and be quiet. I gave a larger context because, again, they want you to carry the content, right? And then C, you saw that when I mentioned lower desertion rates, I'm like, not everyone knows what desertion means. So I quickly translated and said, which means that they stayed in the Army at higher rates or something like that, however I explained it. And that matters too. Again, these are all communication skills that are useful in any environment, right? So when you go on into a non-specialist situation, which is this right here, this is a non-specialist situation because we're not talking to history people here. We're talking on a major network station. You got to be able to speak in regular language, not in jargon. And that's useful, I think. And I mean, so much of business, we have so much jargon all the time that we lose people. And the other thing I want to show, again, the use of props. So this one does not have a food demo because it's a different kind of segment. However, what you're seeing right there, right, is those 2 medals. Yep, and they have a close-up at some point too. And that's actually a presidential medal. Yep, and it didn't focus perfectly when they zoomed in. That's for President Rutherford B. Hayes, who actually came to New Mexico. And I think it's really cool how I tied the story in, if you were to watch the whole segment, because there is a point where he visits New Mexico, and guess who plays the music for them in the Santa Fe Square, actually, is Buffalo Soldiers musical group. There's a regimental band there. And a lot of these guys were at Fort Union, which of course is in New Mexico. And that's the story I go on to tell. And the images, the photos they use at some point of Fort Union are also photos that I took. And so, you know, it shows I'm real, man. Like, I go to these places. If I'm talking about it, I didn't just like start making this stuff up. So I think that it's multiple elements here that matter. So it's both local, but also national. And I think that's important because, you know, it's a New Mexico story, but even if you're not in New Mexico, this is a very cool story, obviously, because a lot of people know Buffalo Soldiers, and New Mexico isn't the only place for them, but is obviously one of the places. And that's why I do the larger context as well, because it also helps local pride to see where they fit in a national picture, right? And this and look how creative I am with tying in the prop, because it's not an obvious connection to connect the presidential silver coin to that. You don't necessarily have to have something that's directly related to the topic. It can be indirect. If you want to play that portion, just like if you come up just a little bit, I'll probably cover it in just a moment. Yep, maybe not that far. Yeah, try there. No, further. Yeah, try there. Let's see what happens there.
They had lower desertion rates. That means they stayed in the Army at higher rates. And 19 Medal of Honor winners from the Buffalo Soldiers will come out. So they had a record of very good service. And eventually that was part of the reason that the first person was admitted for born into slavery, but later becomes the first person at West Point Academy who's Black to then graduate and eventually become an officer.
Wow. How does their story connect with New Mexico?
There's 4,000 of the Buffalo Soldiers that are in New Mexico. Remember I said it's part of a westward expansion. They're overseeing national parks, fighting with tribal peoples. Well, they're in New Mexico in many forts, including Fort Union. And Fort Union, if you go there today, you will find sidewalks that they built that you can actually go and check out, which I've done myself, which is really cool. And then on top of that, in what ties to the story is because these people were here, and Rutherford B. Hayes, who was president in the late 1870s, and whose silver coin I have right here that the U.S. Mint just put out in the last few weeks. You're seeing the head side and the tail side. Rutherford B. Hayes, when he came to Santa Fe, New Mexico, the Buffalo Soldiers Regimental Band is who entertained the presidential party. And by the way, that was the first time a president came to New Mexico. Is Rutherford B. Hayes, and Buffalo Soldiers greeted them. Now, one more story that is really cool in New Mexico with the Buffalo Soldiers is a story of William Cathay. William Cathay had been transferred. He joined in St. Louis, and then from St. Louis was transferred to Kansas and to New Mexico, multiple forts. Well, guess what? Including Fort Union. Well, guess what? When he's near the Silver City, one of the forts near Silver City, there's a problem medically. So goes in and the surgeon discovers that the he is actually a she. She had disguised herself. Her actual name is Kathy Williams. She had changed it
like
to William
Mulan.
Cathay so she could disguise herself so she could serve as part of this opportunity with the Buffalo Soldiers. That's how cool the story is. And it happens right here in New Mexico.
Super impressive. Yeah, how many of them stayed in New Mexico long term?
We don't have an exact number, but there are some key people that did. So one of them, for example, helped start the town of Vado down in southern New Mexico, which was designed as a freedmen and all-black town when it first started in New Mexico. That's one of the legacies. Another one is a family that was down in Mexico and actually hung out with Pancho Villa and then came back to New Mexico and actually settled here in Albuquerque. And if you go to God's House Church, that's a church that they started right here in Albuquerque. And another family also was part of the East End edition in Albuquerque in the 1930s. So there's their fingerprints all over. Even though we don't have an exact number, we know that there are key places they left a mark from their time here in New Mexico.
Very cool. Raffi, always so much fun having you on. If you'd like more information on the Buffalo Soldiers or on Raffi himself, you can head to our website that's always on krqe.com. Stay with us.
Go check it out. So a couple of things to point out there is that obviously clear local ties. Clear local stories, using a lot of names that people know. Pancho Villa, right? A presidential reference. Cool fact that it's the first time that someone, the president came to New Mexico. And I told the story of, you got to always have a good story, right? We were talking about storytelling in business, right? About the story of William Cathay. That's a pretty cool story. And it happened right there in New Mexico, right? And so what's really fascinating there is, again, those local ties, but those stories also have national implications. So it helps New Mexico see their place in the national picture. Or if you're outside of New Mexico and you're watching it, it still is, cool and relevant and interesting, right? The other thing I noticed when I was talking is I was using my body to talk, right? Because we're on a visual medium. So if we're not going to have the prop or the B-roll that's up that I provided, then I'm making sure I'm communicating with my body language as well. So it's visually something at least that, if you had even the volume off, you could tell, man, that guy's excited talking about this. So that makes sense. You're communicating with your body language because you may have the sound off or low or whatever the case is. And also, of course, it makes for great screenshots. We saw one earlier, when if you're just like this the whole time, then you don't really have a lot of great screenshots. When you're like this, you're going to make great screenshots, which you can use elsewhere. All these things are very, very much relevant. Now, you also noticed at the end, let me add one more thing on that. You could see that after I said the presidential story, before I transitioned to a William Cathay story, that if I could have just paused, there was kind of a natural pause there and I could have just stopped. And I didn't. I said, there's another story I want to share. And she totally gave me the floor, right? Because again, they want you to take that time, as long as you're not going too long, obviously, but you got to start to feel the time. But if you're within your time, and sometimes they'll even give you an extra minute if you're doing well. If you're not doing well, they're not going to give you that extra minute. Okay, they're deciding on the spot. But if you're doing well and you're engaging and you're thorough, if you're engaging in kind of in the thick of a story, and it's not like long-winded, right? Then they're actually going to give you that extra time. And I bought that extra time, and I saw, in the moment I'm looking at her, and I can kind of tell from her body language that she's willing to give me that. And so again, they want you to carry the story forward, right? You're the expert on there for this topic. You notice also then by the end, she says, if you want to learn more, go to our website. Great. What happens with these things is it's not just the TV appearance live that matters. What matters is that they take these clips and they put it on their website. And when you're on a TV station website, those are among the highest traffic websites in all their local markets, okay? Because of traffic, weather, local news, these are kind of, very common, obviously, places for locally to go to. Your local newspaper site, your local TV site, etc. And so it doesn't matter if you didn't see it live, you may see it there, but more importantly, when they do that, and you've been on many times like I have, Google loves you because Google sees that you're on these major sites, high traffic sites, credible sites, and all these sites are therefore going to boost you up. So if you were to Google me, the Google SEO is tremendously good, and that's worth thousands of dollars because people spend a lot of money trying to get that. And it's not just that one website is at the top if you were to try to buy SEO, but instead I dominate all of it. It's all me because of all those TV appearances. So it has this indirect marketing impact also to Google. And I love that she mentioned her website because that's how that works. And finally, notice that I'm not on there selling myself. I'm not on there pitching stuff, because otherwise you should just buy advertising or buy a sponsored segment or something like that. I'm on there as the expert because I'm not worried about selling you something there. What I'm concerned about is being positioned as the expert, getting the Google SEO that I described, having a TV platform, the recognition, etc., rather than being a pitchman.
Got it. I think the Gloom's ready for a segment with you, Ralph. You can do the history.
Sounds great.
The history of the Santa Fe Gloom.
Hey, sounds good. We could just need to research.
Yeah. But
I know the owner, right? So he can help me.
Yeah, we'll send it to you, and as our story unfolds, it's only going to get better.
So I hope that's some insight on, business, presentations, communication, media, marketing, providing value, right? Whether it's the luggage tag we were talking about earlier to you, to the TV station, and figure out what they need, what they want, rather than arm wrestling them for what I want, right? And when you find that alignment from their side, from whoever you're talking to, then you're going to have much better ability to deliver your message, right?
Ralph, do you have 5-10 more minutes?
5 minutes? I could do 5.
Okay. Quickly,
yeah.
Share with our audience our conversation and our talk about cost for the Santa Fe Gloom games and how that came about.
Oh, yeah,
set the table for us.
Well, like we were talking about earlier, right? For sporting events, I think they're community events and not just for the sports fans. And if you want it to be community events, then A, you want to make it accessible, right? Because so anyone can come. But B, as a business, you understand that the tickets are not where you make the most money. Because even if you were to try to get some money for that, that's not where most of your money maker is, right? From a business standpoint, you want to get audience in there so you can provide more value to your sponsors so they have more eyeballs. And the sponsors are where you can make a lot more money in the process, delivering something good for the community, because now it's accessible and anyone can go, regardless of the socioeconomic status, to access and have that family affair, that community gathering. Heck, even a birthday, man. You go before and after a birthday, or with a kid or whatever it is. And how much does it cost to do those things normally? A lot of money. But if you can access there free, that is a really good position to be for the community, right? So it's the way you design the structure of the company and what's going on, and understanding where you're going to make your money and where you're not going to make your money. And in the process, how can you serve all of them? Because look how it's a win-win for everyone. It's a win for the sponsors because there's more audience there, because it's a lower cost to go because it's free, right? But it's also a win for the audience, for the visitors, the people that are going, right? The viewership, because they're able to go for free. So both parties are winning. So now we've created what I was talking about earlier, alignment. We're not doing arm wrestling where you give me this, I give you that. No, we're creating alignment because both sides benefit, right? The recipients, this is the audience, and the sponsors, which is kind of the let's say the bulk of the funders, that both sides benefit with what we're describing. That's alignment. And of course, that works for the team to be successful and viable, because it has to be in the black and be, profitable to continue this service, right? And so that's how I would think about this. And that's why I think, when we were talking about ticket pricing, I was thinking, this is the perspective we had to keep. And instead of trying to get a few dollars on each ticket, let's actually keep the larger goal in mind and look at the forest from the trees, right? So it's a great example of how my business mind works, right? And the marketing side of it is there because you're marketing to the sponsors, and you're also obviously at the same time delivering a product to a wider audience because the people are able to attend for free. Now, if I may add one more thing, David, is that obviously with all this stuff we're talking about, I do a TV seminar / kind of training and support program, sharing a lot of what we're talking about here, the principles of what we're talking about here, especially since we spend a lot of time on the TV stuff. But as you can see, it relates to other business things, even if you're not necessarily directly going on TV now. But I do show how to get on TV, how to do well on camera, which can be relevant on whatever you're doing, how to use it in business for profitability. And, these concepts we're talking about, even with the tickets, are about profitability. If anyone wants to check that out, they could check out tvseminar.tv. That's the website for that event. Next one is in April. But I do some private hires for that as well. Or you can go to my site, which is right there on the screen, raffiandonian.com. That has all my stuff, within which you'll see one of the links is TV seminar. So either one works. So there are places and ways I share this stuff. And you know, obviously you and I, David, have been doing that sort of thing for years.
Yeah. No, you nailed it. Ralphie, thank you so much, man.
All right. Thanks, David.
I know you got to roll. So thanks. Thank you to the sponsors, Santa Fe Gloom, audience community. We miss you, Ralphie. Come back for a Santa Fe Gloom game.
Of course. Absolutely.
Thanks.
That'd be great.
Thanks for hanging out, and we'll have you back on again for sure.
Awesome. Thanks. Sounds good.
Thanks.